February 1943, North Africa. A column of American soldiers stumbles east through the Kasserine Pass. They have no coherent command structure. They have no defensive plan. They are running. In 6 days, 6,500 American casualties, 3,000 captured. 50 miles of ground surrendered to Rommel's Africa Corps. That night, Rommel writes to his wife. His tone approaches satisfaction. The Americans, he notes, have not yet learned how to fight. He is correct. The United States Army in 1939 ranked 19th in total size, smaller than Portugal, smaller than Romania. Hitler had already concluded that a mongrel nation of immigrants could not match the fighting spirit of the German soldier. Kasserine confirmed it. German intelligence filed its assessment. The Americans lacked hardness. They lacked cohesion. Their material abundance could not compensate for tactical incompetence and poor leadership. This was the official verdict, and on the evidence available, it was reasonable. But there is a problem with reasonable verdicts drawn from early evidence. They become permanent assumptions. Rommel and his commanders had seen the Americans at their absolute worst moment. They assumed they had seen the Americans at their normal level of capability. They did not understand what they were watching: a learning organization. In the early stages of an extraordinarily rapid process of adaptation, something was already being built. Not a better soldier, not a tougher infantryman. Something else entirely. A system. Quiet, invisible. Developed during peacetime at a dusty artillery school in Oklahoma that no German intelligence officer had ever heard of. The system ran on radio, and within months, German soldiers would encounter it for the first time. Some of them would weep, not from wounds, from what they could not see, could not fight, and could not stop. The official German assessment of the American fighting man followed a clear logic. German soldiers were professionals. Many had fought continuously since 1939. Poland, France, North Africa, the Eastern Front. They understood combined arms warfare at the squad level through hard experience. The Americans were amateurs, drafted civilians in uniform. Their officers read Doctrine from textbooks. Their NCOs had never heard a shot fired in anger before November 1942. At Kasserine, this gap was visible to the naked eye. Major General Lloyd Friedendahl commanded 2nd Corps from a bunker 70 miles behind the front line. His units were scattered across indefensible positions. When Rommel struck on February 14th, the defense collapsed in sequence. The German conclusion was not arrogance, it was pattern recognition. Professional soldiers had measured amateur soldiers and found them wanting. The assessment traveled upward through Wehrmacht channels and reinforced what Hitler already believed. America was fundamentally soft. This conclusion contained a hidden assumption so deeply embedded that no one examined it. The Germans were evaluating American soldiers as individual fighters, man against man, squad against squad, rifle against rifle. By that metric, the verdict held. Individual German soldiers did outperform individual American soldiers in small unit engagements and direct firefights. This remained true throughout the war. But the Germans were asking the wrong question. They measured what they could see: the soldier, the rifle, the tank. They did not measure what they could not see: the network connecting every gun on the battlefield to every pair of eyes on the ground. 5 weeks after Kasserine, the same 2nd Corps, under new command, met the same Africa Corps at a place called Guettar. The Germans expected to meet the same Americans. They did not. Something answered that had no precedent in the war. March 23, 1943. Guettar, Tunisia. German armor advanced against American positions. Standard doctrine, tanks forward, infantry following. The same approach that had shattered Second Corps 5 weeks earlier. The first rounds arrived without warning. What the Germans encountered was something entirely new. Not just more guns, something systematic, something coordinated in ways that German artillery had never achieved, something that erased the distance between the observer calling targets and the shells exploding among tanks and infantry. 30 German tanks were destroyed. When captured, German soldiers were interrogated afterward. Some of them wept openly. They told their American captors that this was the first time in the entire war they had ever been stopped by mere artillery and infantry without significant armor support. These were veterans of North Africa, men who had fought the British Eighth Army across Libya and Egypt, men who had endured Soviet artillery barrages on the Eastern Front. None of that had prepared them for this. The interrogation reports traveled up the chain. They should have triggered a fundamental reassessment. Instead, German intelligence treated Guettar as an anomaly, a local success. Perhaps the Americans had simply concentrated more guns in one place. They had not simply concentrated more guns. The difference was invisible. It lived in radio frequencies and firing calculations and a doctrine that allowed any forward observer anywhere on the battlefield to call fire from any battery in range. No prior relationship required. No dedicated communication link needed. A request spoken into a handset. Mathematics performed in a fire direction center. Coordinates relayed to gun crews who had never seen the target. 3 minutes from request to impact. The German system required 10 to 12 minutes for the same result. That gap, 7 minutes, would kill tens of thousands of men. But what exactly was this system, and where did it come from? Fort Sill, Oklahoma. The years between the wars. While most nations cut military budgets and ignored artillery innovation, a small group of American officers solved a problem no other army was trying to solve. The problem was centralization. In the British and German systems, forward observers controlled their own batteries through direct communication links. Each battery operated somewhat independently. An observer talked to his guns fired. The system worked, but it had a ceiling. One observer, one battery. The relationship was fixed. The Americans broke that relationship. They created the Fire Direction Center, a battalion-level node where all fire requests converged, where standardized mathematics translated any observer's report into firing data for any gun in range. The implications were architectural. Any observer, any battery, any combination. Fire requests could pass upward from battalion to division to corps level with remarkable speed. The guns of an entire army could concentrate on a single target. Mechanical firing aids and standardized procedures compressed the cycle. Request to impact, approximately 3 minutes. The mathematics were simplified not through genius but through industrial logic. The same logic that Henry Ford had used to build automobiles. A shell manufactured in Ohio would fit a gun assembled in Michigan, being served by a crew trained in Oklahoma. The Germans had no equivalent. General Hans Eberbach documented that his artillery included guns manufactured in France, Czechoslovakia, Poland, and the Soviet Union. Each type required different ammunition, different spare parts, different maintenance procedures. A shell made in one factory would not fit a gun made in another. The American system was invisible because it was not a weapon. It was a network, and the network ran on radio. But the Fire Direction Center was only the foundation. Above it, something else was circling. Small, slow, unarmed, and far more dangerous than it appeared. The word is imprecise here. No one concealed anything. The failure was perceptual. German commanders could not see the system because their doctrinal framework had no category for it. They understood firepower. They understood maneuver. They did not understand networked fire control as a force multiplier independent of individual soldier quality. Field Marshal von Rundstedt, commanding German forces in the West, developed his strategy on the old assumption. He would screen off the British sector, whose methods he understood and could predict. He would concentrate mobile reserves against the Americans. He knew what the British would do before they did it. He was never certain what the Americans would do until they were already doing it. This uncertainty was not American cleverness. It was systemic flexibility. The radio network allowed American commanders to shift fires faster than German planners believed possible. A quiet sector could become a kill zone in 3 minutes. Rundstedt saw terrain. He saw unit dispositions. He saw the hedgerow country of Normandy that favored defense. He did not see the Piper Cubs, a fragile aircraft, fabric covering, no weapons, a top speed barely faster than an automobile. A single Piper Cub could call down the fire of dozens of guns on any target visible from the air. German soldiers learned to dread those tiny aircraft circling overhead. They knew exactly what followed when a Cub began orbiting their position. Close air support integrated through forward air controllers who could call in fighter bombers within minutes, faster than German units could react. The system was layered: observer on the ground, aircraft in the sky, fire direction center in the rear, guns across the entire front, all connected by radio, all feeding the same network. And the network was about to demonstrate something no army had ever attempted. A technique that made time itself a weapon. The Americans called it time on target. The mathematics were straightforward. The effect was not. Batteries of different calibers positioned at varying distances from a target would calculate their firing times with precise coordination. Light guns closer to the target would fire later. Heavy guns farther away would fire earlier. All shells from all guns arrived simultaneously, within a window of just a few seconds. For German soldiers in the impact zone, silence. Then instantaneous saturation. No warning. No first shell to send men diving for cover before the main barrage. Just sudden destruction appearing from nowhere, as if the sky itself had collapsed. At Elsenborn Ridge during the Battle of the Bulge, 348 American guns concentrated their fire using this technique. The German advance stopped. Not slowed, stopped. But time on target was not the final revelation. The Americans had spent over $1 billion on a program second only to the atomic bomb. A miniature radar set, small enough to fit inside an artillery shell. The proximity fuse. Standard artillery shells exploded on impact, driving fragments into the ground. The proximity fuse detonated the shell approximately 30 feet above the surface. Fragments sprayed downward across foxholes, trenches, any position open to the sky. 5 to 10 times more lethal than conventional fire against dug-in infantry. German prisoners captured during the Bulge reported that some soldiers charged directly into American positions rather than endure the airburst artillery. They preferred the chance of being shot in a direct assault to the certainty of being shredded from above while cowering in their holes. Patton's report was clinical. The new shell with the funny fuse is devastating. We caught a German battalion trying to get across the Sauer River with a battalion concentration and killed by actual count 702. The pencil stub marked the coordinates on his map. Nothing more. The system matured in sequence. Each capability multiplied the others. Tunisia ended in May 1943. 275,000 Axis soldiers surrendered. Rommel had already been evacuated. Before leaving, he wrote an assessment that contradicted his earlier dismissal. The Americans, he now acknowledged, were learning faster than expected. Too late. By July 1944, the full architecture was operational. On July 25th, Operation Cobra demonstrated what networked combined arms could achieve. Approximately 1,500 heavy bombers struck German positions near Saint-Lô. Forward air controllers directed fighter bombers onto surviving strongpoints. Artillery sealed the flanks. Fritz Bayerlein commanded Panzer Lehr Division in the impact zone. His division entered the bombardment with 45 operational tanks. When the firing stopped, 7 remained. Bayerlein would later write 20 drafts attempting to describe what happened. He concluded that no campaign in history could approach the Battle of Annihilation in France in the magnitude of planning, the logic of execution, the seamless collaboration of sea, air, and ground forces. The dominoes fell rapidly after Cobra. At the Falaise pocket in August, 60,000 German soldiers were encircled, 10,000 killed, 50,000 surrendered. Eisenhower walked the battlefield afterward. The scenes, he wrote, could be described only by Dante. It was possible to walk for hundreds of yards stepping on nothing but dead and decaying flesh. The system that had wept German veterans at El Guettar now consumed entire armies. Battery C of the 337th Field Artillery Battalion fired 300,000 rounds between June 1944 and March 1945. One battery, 300,000 shells, each one called, computed, and directed through the network. And still, in December 1944, Hitler would gamble everything on one final assumption. The Americans were fundamentally soft. Why did the blindness persist? The answer lies in the structure of German military thinking. Wehrmacht doctrine elevated the individual soldier. Training, will, initiative at the squad level. The German system produced exceptional small unit fighters because it was designed to produce exceptional small unit fighters. This excellence became a cognitive trap. When German officers evaluated an opposing army, they evaluated its soldiers. The American soldier, measured individually, remained inferior to his German counterpart in tactical skill throughout the war. This was true. And this truth concealed a larger truth. Where individual German soldiers outperformed individual Americans in direct firefights, the Americans created force multipliers that magnified the effectiveness of every man in uniform beyond what individual performance would predict. The Germans could not see this because their own system had no equivalent. December 16, 1944. Hitler launched the Ardennes Offensive. The premise was partly built on Kasserine. American soldiers would crumble under determined surprise assault as they had nearly 2 years before. At Lanzarote Ridge, 22 American soldiers held against approximately 500 German paratroopers for 18 hours. At Bastogne, McAuliffe answered the German surrender demand with a single word. The Americans did not crumble. And when Patton turned his Third Army 90 degrees, moving over 100,000 men more than 100 miles in winter to relieve Bastogne, Joachim Peiper's spearhead was already 36 hours behind schedule. The 348 guns at Elsenborn Ridge, the proximity fuse over the Ardennes forests, the radio network that turned every hilltop observer into an artillery director. Churchill, watching from London, issued a careful statement. Care must be taken in telling our proud tale not to claim for the British Army an undue share of what is undoubtedly the greatest American battle of the war. The motive for German blindness was doctrinal. They could not fear what they could not categorize. March 1945. The Rhine crossing. 9th Army assembled 2,070 artillery pieces along the riverbank, over 1,000 rounds per minute, 65,000 shells in approximately 1 hour. Every gun linked by radio to a fire direction center, Every shell computed, timed, coordinated. The river crossing succeeded. Afterward, the confessions came. Guderian, the father of Blitzkrieg, spoke of Patton with professional respect. He conducted a good campaign. From the standpoint of a tank specialist, I must congratulate him on his victory, since he acted as I would have done had I been in his place. Jodl was more direct. The war was already lost in the West at the time of the breakthrough and the beginning of the war of movement in France. Gunther Blumentritt called Patton the most aggressive panzer general of the Allies, but none of them named the soldier as the source of their defeat. German veterans and officers who survived the war consistently identified American artillery as the weapon they feared most, more than tanks, more than fighter bombers, more than anything else on the battlefield. Not the guns themselves, the system connecting them. A forward observer with a radio handset, a fire direction center with standardized charts, a network that turned any pair of eyes into the trigger for hundreds of guns. 3 minutes from whisper to impact. The Germans never feared the American soldier. They feared what happened when he spoke into his radio. The improvement came faster than any German model predicted. By the time they understood what they were facing, the mathematics had already been calculated, the coordinates already transmitted, the shells already in flight.